Media program of the European Union. Thank you very much for your support. My name is Jo Mühlberger, and I'm from European Film Promotion. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists today, to our moderators. So to our moderators today, we have Susan Davis, my colleague. She's overseeing the film sales support scheme of European Film Promotion, supporting European sales agents at international festivals and markets. And we have our managing director, Sonja Heinen, who many of you, of course, know when she was wearing the hat of the Berlinale co-production market. So welcome, and Sonja, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Jo. The best person to welcome the guest at all. Thank you very much for coming, for joining. I'd like to briefly, before we go to our panelists, to introduce European Film Promotion to you. I know you are from Hamburg, but and I know some of you might know us, but maybe you don't know all the activities we are doing. So EFP, that is our abbreviation, European Film Promotion, is the international network organization of all the national film promotion institutes in Europe. Each of these organizations, their task is to promote their national films and talent abroad. And at EFP, they come together to jointly do initiatives to promote the diversity of European cinema throughout the whole world. So we are basically mostly working outside of Europe, and we are mostly working B2B. We have film promotion programs. We promote, for example, the newest European documentaries at Hot Docs Film Festival in Toronto, Canada. We go with an artistic delegation of European filmmakers to Busan. We have a female director's spot at Sydney Film Festival. Also, we have talent programs. Most of you might know Producers on the Move, which we do every year in Cannes. We do Berlinale. At the Berlinale, we do European Shooting Stars. We have a program for young filmmakers, student filmmakers in Carlo Vivari called Future Frames. But the core of our activity is also that we are present at many international festivals and markets so that we can be the bridge between you, the European industry, and the industry from outside of Europe. And so we go and organize umbrella booths for European sales agents, and for everything the goal is to promote European films outside of Europe, to see them all over the world, and to help our European industry connecting with the industry outside of Europe. And Susanne, my colleague, as you said, she's heading the film sales support department. And this is a very important initiative for us, because with film sales support, we can support the sales companies by improving their promotion campaigns. So, and that is why we have very good contacts to sales agents and can bring them here to you online.
Yes, hello, welcome everyone. We are going to have our guests online soon. I mean, there they are.
Hello.
Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Don't be irritated in the audience. We have this small screen in front, so we're looking downwards and not at you. All of these
can look here.
Yeah, or the other way around. All of these companies that come from different European countries are all active in acquiring and selling European films. And most of them are actually also co-producing or financing projects. So I think this is one of the issues that's going to be quite important for you to see how this is changing, maybe how this can be sustained, but they will speak for themselves. First of all, I'd like to introduce Susan Wendt from Trust Nordisk. A lot of you will know this company. It's one of the biggest sales company in Europe. Concentrating on Scandinavian films, but not only. They also have other films from Europe in their portfolio. They work with bigger production companies as well as smaller ones. So that's the beauty of this company, that they also are open for other international projects. The films that have been recently on their slate is Thomas Winterberg's Another Round, which is in the festival, and maybe you've seen this film, so yes. Have we
And
all
look behind
got
me.
the same level of alcohol, maybe? So,
There's a picture behind her.
okay.
The still
Yes.
of the film.
Yes, you do. Oh, great. Wonderful promotion. Another film that you have is Riders of Justice by Anders Thomas Jensen from Denmark, and a Dutch film as well, Do Not Hesitate, from Sharif Korva. So these are a few examples, and you can expand on that later, Susan. Jan. Jan Janaszewski is CEO of New Europe Film Sales, a company that's based in Poland. You call yourself a boutique sales agent, which is really nice because your credo is you carefully select films, you are very dedicated to smaller films, you have a whole range of European films. In fact, I've seen there's one film in the festival as well here in Hamburg, which is Sweat from Poland, a co-production between Poland and Sweden. Then you have a Greek film as well from Babis Makridis. Maybe you know this filmmaker who's quite on the sort of... Greece is an interesting country in terms of innovative new films. Another film is The Peasants, which is a Poland film, and A Perfect Normal Family, a Danish film. What I would like to mention is that New Europe Film Sales have come together with producers Eva Pluszinska and Claudia Smeja to form a production entity, NEM.corp, and you are developing and co-producing projects of both local and international talents. This is important to know as well. Yeah, please wave. Jan, no wave. Jan, Susan, wave. You have waved, okay. Stephen from Bankside Films. Can you wave, Steve, just to say? Yep, great, thanks. Bankside, yes, this is a name it stands for this extraordinary area in London, which has always been kind of innovative, extraordinary, because it was outside of the borders of London. You took this name as a template for your company, meaning that you are working mostly with very bold, cutting-edge films, like the film Wolf that you have in your lineup by Natalie Banchieri. I assume she's an Italian director. This film has actually been in Berlinale Talents in 2019. Then you have Ken Zucker's Kingdom, which is not a European, it is a European film. Yes, it's UK and Luxembourg, that's right. Yes, it's an animated film. You have Benediction by Terence Davies, and On the Fringe, which is a Spanish film, by Juan Diego Bota. So you see as well that this company has a broad range of European titles in the program. Level K, where is Tina? Yes, hi, there you are. Tina came on board rather late. It's really lovely that you are joining us. Level K is both handles international sales and works as an aggregator. So this model is quite different, or other. It works in a different way. So we are going to be very excited to hear the way that you work, the way that you gain access for films, both in a classical way, but also mainly online. So that's quite a change to your company, but you've been doing that for quite a while, but it will be interesting to see how this works out under the new conditions. Your recent films have been Tove, which was in Toronto this year in Industry Selects. The film about, I don't know if you know this animated character, the children's animated, the Moomins. Some of you know this very famous writer. It's a Finnish film. Then you have Aswang in the Hamburg Film Festival, which is a film from the Philippines, though it's not European, but still I would like to mention it. And Martyrs Lane from the UK. The Pack, which is a co-production between the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Latvia. And a Belgian film, Space Boy, which is a children or family film. So here again we have a whole range of European countries that are covered. Yes, that's basically it, and we're all set up, and let's dig into the subject.
Yes, so first we come to you, our dear sales companies. Please, so this shall be a dialogue between you and the producers, but and I really ask you, the producers, ask us question in between. We will have to repeat them here because you in the Zoom cannot hear them. We might face you might face a little delay. But ask questions. The sales agents are here for you now, so use the opportunity. Yeah, and for you, I would like to ask you, what have you faced in the last month? How has the current situation affected your business? Have you found new opportunities? We know you have, but maybe speak a little bit about what you found, what you didn't expect, and were there some positive things to discover, and how are you waiting for everything to become like before again? And please, can you also specify a little bit on how your relationship to producers maybe changed in the past month? Are you working more intensively together, or maybe from each of you, like a few minutes of a kind of starting statement about that. Susan, shall we start with you again?
Yeah, we can do that. So first of all, thank you
We don't know when your internet runs out.
Exactly. It might be I'm out. I mean, the opportunity that we have this way is to be out somewhere where no one can see where you are, and I'm in a little spot where the internet might not be 100% sufficient, but I hope it will be. As mentioned, Trust Nordisk is mainly working within films from the Nordic countries, but more and more we are also dealing with films from other European countries, but mainly from films within Europe, not really outside of that so far. And one of the films is Thomas Winterberg, which is in Hamburg, and which I put behind me so that you can get thirsty and hopefully not too bored in this whole situation. Yes, I mean, looking back at what has happened since Berlin until now is really like an incredible thing, I think, for all of us. None of us expected in Berlin that 3/4 year later we would sit basically at home, not traveling at all the time when the whole COVID situation came up. It was, well, maybe it's ready for Cannes again, then it's ready for Toronto in September, and so on and so on. And it keeps pushing further into the future. And of course, it makes us work in a different way. One of the most important things as a sales agent is really the face-to-face meeting. It's a people's business, and meeting people face-to-face, talking face-to-face, being at the festivals, hearing the rumors and the talk in between people, competitors, people from different countries, is a really important factor in this business. So I mean, missing out on all of that has been really, really tough. The first time we had to face it for real was for Cannes, where there was an online market which came a bit later than the original market was going to be, where all of us met on Zoom like we are here now. We had market screenings, and I must say our expectations were quite low. But the positives there was for the market screenings, where we had the opportunity to show a bit more films than normally. The attendance of distributors at these market screenings were actually pretty good. And there was activities within sales as well. Of course, not the same hype that you can get by being out face-to-face, having people talking about the same films. You don't have bidding wars and stuff in the same way from distributors, but people were there and people were buying. The distributors were buying. Everyone in these talks, of course, talked about COVID, and everyone was kind of expecting that during the autumn everything would be fine again, which obviously it's not. So we're still behind our screens. So it's really about finding a new way of communication as well. One of them is Zoom, because it's not the same just to be in dialogue on email or on the phone. So I think for us, I've never had so many meetings on Zoom during the day as we do now, not only with distributors, but also in general with producers, with organizations like Europa International, which is an organization for sales agents, with Creative Europe, and a lot of other organizations to try to get a feeling of the whole circuit of the film industry. We are also meeting for Europa International with European Producers Club, with Europa Cinema, and trying to really get a feel of the whole industry in between us as well, and follow up also meetings with European film promotion and stuff like that to try to figure out the best way of how we can survive this together. Is that enough?
Yeah, thank you,
More?
Susan. Maybe a word still to your relationship to the producers. I mean, how did you're also talking to producers on Zoom, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, basically with producers, because we meet with producers obviously on a regular basis at work in progress seminars and stuff like that, where we meet with producers. And I mean, these meetings basically will go on Zoom as well or on phone in order to be kept updated on new projects. And basically, we are still being approached by producers on separate emails or things like that, not only during the festivals. And I guess the direct contact is more intense now because people can't just, make a meeting at a festival in the same way as you could before. So it's still like, a good and intense way of meeting. I mean, my colleague Celia was taking part of a co-production and producer thing in Utrecht last weekend. There was Haugesund, which was in August. And I mean, there are these spots where producers are meeting up as well. I might be going to European Work in Progress in Cologne next week. So, I mean, there are still the spots, and it will either be online or it will be like few times face-to-face. So it's there, and it's like by email, by phone, and by Zoom.
And how is it, the last question for the moment for you, how is it affecting your usual business? I mean, when the producers would come to you with a project, what would you say now? Oh my God, I have still so many projects here in the backlog. I cannot take up a new project. Or how is the mood of that? Of course, we know if it's exciting, you go for it anyway. But
yeah, I mean, I think you can't do it that way. I have so many projects that you can't take in. You have to. It's still, I mean, the same basics in terms of discussing and talking about each and every project and evaluating whether it's a project that fits into our slate or maybe fits in better into a slate of some of the other sales agents. So definitely, it's not that we're more afraid. What we are, of course, is like, the economical situation is hard for everyone. So, I mean, the expectations in terms of how much money a producer will have as an MG upfront can be a different situation than before, because, of course, the money flow and the risks are different. But the talks are still the same, and I think we can all agree that no matter what, we still need films to be done, and we still need the films to come out there.
okay, thank you, Susan. With who do we continue?
Yes, shall we continue with Stephen from the UK?
Yes, sure. Much as Susan says, it's been a really interesting few months. I mean, when the pandemic began, there was really two kind of key issues for us. One is that we had 3 films which were about to start production, which obviously all of them were postponed. And that's when you look at a company of our size, having 3 films, the production cancelled, that has a significant impact on your bottom line, on your cash flow and when revenue is going to be received. So that was an immediate concern for us. And it was very closely followed by the realization that Cannes wasn't going to happen, or at least not in its usual form. So the kind of questions that we were asking ourselves is, A, how do we generate income when the films that we were relying on this year are not going to go into production? And B, how do we engage with buyers and distributors when one of the biggest markets of the year is not going to happen? So that really kind of led us to reevaluate the way we run the business and how we're going to navigate this extraordinary situation. From an acquisitions point of view, the first thing we did was to really focus on films that had already been shot, because we knew there was going to be a hiatus in production, and that new projects, new material was not going to be forthcoming for the rest of this year. So, using the contacts that we have with producers that we've met at various events, actually all around Europe, we actually picked up 3 films which had already been shot and were in post-production. 2 of those being European, actually. And we were really thrilled that we were able to do that, because it's not very often that, it's hard to find films that have already been made that fit your taste or fit the brand of your company, and that you feel you can be successful with on an international basis. So that was the very first thing we did. And the second was, as Susan said, we fully embraced virtual Cannes. That became so important to us because we needed a fixed time, a fixed set of dates where the industry was going to collaborate and come together and discuss new projects and discuss new films. And actually, that was an incredibly positive experience for us. I think everybody took it seriously. Everybody was in a frame of mind to want to do business. And it proved to be incredibly successful. And that brings me on to kind of opportunity in a way. Our experience was that, particularly with American companies, they have big films, big budget, big cast, loads of extras. They're not going to be able to film those films, certainly not this year, and probably not next year either. And so we found there was a real opportunity where these larger American companies were looking to the independent sector for films that could work for them, can fit into their release slate. And we were able to do some really good business that way. And I think, generally speaking, our experience was that people are trying to look beyond the pandemic, beyond COVID, to a time when cinemas will be open, audiences will be attending, and are still acquiring films on that basis. Obviously, there are certain areas of the world that are very, very badly affected by it, and that's, decimated their business. But yeah, that's been our general experience over the past few months.
So Stephen, would you say that, because you mentioned it already, there are lots of opportunities actually, and I really would like to stress that, because this maybe some of the aspects haven't been so obvious and available in the past. So basically you would encourage producers to be more proactive maybe, because there is more space perhaps, even if it's in the future, to think ahead. And the other point is that as everything is going online, people were really critical and worried about how is this going to work. But is it the case that we're getting more used to it, this kind of means of communication? So we're getting more relaxed, we're taking more advantage of it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I haven't been to the office since March, and neither have my colleagues, and that was a huge, I was always the guy that was like, no, you must come to the office. I wasn't a particular fan of home working, and I've been really surprised by how the company has continued almost seamlessly by going online. And, we haven't noticed any inefficiency or haven't been able to accomplish something that we would have done were we in the office in person. So it's been really revelatory to me. And as I say, using virtual Cannes as an example, the communication was so easy and so direct. So I think we have embraced it, and producers shouldn't be afraid to continue to engage with us. And, as far as interaction with producers goes is that, that hasn't changed for us at all. We've just switched everything to Zoom. We're participating in all of the co-production markets that have taken place virtually. We're receiving large numbers of projects. So the door is very much open. And I think one of the biggest things to take away from this period is that the demand for content isn't going away. If anything, it's increasing. So there must be opportunity there, particularly as people are kept at home and are looking for more ways to kind of fill their time and be entertained. So for me, I try to look for the opportunity in that. And I think that is a real opportunity.
Thank you very much for these encouraging words. Then shall we switch over to Jan? I don't want to be impolite to push Tina backwards, but I think because she has such a different way of working, I'd like to push her back to the end. So Jan, if you can give us your views for your company.
Sure. I guess it's actually, hello, guten Tag, first of all. I'm actually interested in how many producers are in the room, just to...
About 20, I would say.
Okay, just to figure it out. 6. I think it's a good mix of companies in a way, because I think we do have slightly different models and different challenges and different opportunities in that sense. We are probably staff-wise and in terms of the running costs, we're probably the smallest operation out of the group here. So I felt kind of blessed with that, that we are in Warsaw. We have an office in Warsaw. We have, we don't have those huge costs that would maybe really stress me out in that sense where a difficult time comes. So we were able to kind of be a more flexible boat, when the weather is changing on the sea. But I found it very frustrating that we as sales agents, we really are between two worlds, which are very different, especially during the pandemic, So we are really between the distributors and the producers, and the distributors, the feedback that we've been getting from distributors was very much like, let's take it easy, let's see what happens, let's not, before we spend money, we need to assess, the cinemas are closing, we need to see where we are. Let's maybe take a break for a while and see what happens. Whereas the producers, on the other hand, were calling us all the time, asking us what's happening, are the markets happening? And you really had to do a lot of the same conversations, updating all of your clients that we've committed to a number of movies that were either almost finished and we've been planning premieres, rather either in Cannes or Venice or whatever, So that was tough in a way that we were very much between those two mindsets, and also the producers. I'm hearing myself. I don't know. It was okay, that's good. So for example, producers are in financing mode all the time. And, I always say producers are like sharks. They need to keep swimming. Otherwise, they cannot say, oh, let's close the office for 3 months and see what happens. I felt like a lot of distributors did, in a way that, they just said, okay, let's, we don't need, if we don't release movies, we don't lose money either. Because there were funding sessions and Euromage. And so we kept getting lots and lots of scripts and people were asking for, letters of intent and things like that. And that was for me personally, on a kind of emotional level, that was a tough thing, to figure out if we are in full operational mode or if we are in this kind of sleeper mode, because these were the two different, very conflicting feedbacks that we've been getting from the market. And at the same time, obviously, we needed to sit down and figure out, like, okay, where are we financially? Where are the basics? How do we cover that? And so this was tough. And obviously, I guess for the whole world, it's been tough to organize working remotely. This was a challenge. Although I guess sales agents in general, we are on the road a lot. We are in markets all the time. So actually, we do have a lot of tools that we've been using over the years that allowed us to keep communicating. So that wasn't that bad. And we had, there were a couple of movies that were kind of bigger for us, and they were delayed. We felt like there was a couple of movies like where we felt like we need a physical market and physical premiere. So it's kind of what Susan was saying, that that we would rather take it easy, finish that movie, and maybe wait for next year to really give the team like a physical premiere experience with it. So suddenly certain processes in terms of like post-production were delayed, or we had more time suddenly to finish some movies. Other movies, we had a problem with maybe smaller titles, which were maybe first and second time filmmakers, which we do a lot. And those movies, quite often, they need a festival to launch to justify the quality of the movie, and not having Cannes, not having, we were on shortlists for a number of films for a number of festivals. And there is a number of movies that we need to push to next year. And I am very worried what's going to happen to them, because some of them are small and fragile movies that need a festival and need the press and need the attention that comes out of it. And I really hope that they will not die. But we probably have like 3-4 movies that are not something you go to the market with regardless, because it would be like a small Russian or Finnish title, more of a festival film. And these festivals either are not happening or they have less slots. I think the fact that, Toronto had maybe 50 slots rather than 300, that was there was a problem for both bigger, more maybe English language movies, but also, if you have, I think it was nice that they did this, for example, like Tina, you had Tuve there, and this was, at least it was a bit of a spotlight, but there was a number of movies that usually profit from that attention, especially maybe smaller, like Scandinavian debut, that usually do well in Toronto as well. And this was not there anymore this year.
And Jan, how do you handle that? For example, the situation that you have three films which you could bring to a festival. How does it work with, you tell the producer, hey, listen, it doesn't make sense. It is a first-time director. You're a first-time director, so it doesn't make sense to bring the film now to any online platform or to release the film without that. Is there any problems you faced to this, or are producers desperate, saying like, okay, now there's a big pressure on Berlinale probably, or?
We're in the same boat,
Yeah, sure.
It's a marriage. You get into a movie, it's a marriage for in sickness and in health, So in that sense, it's our common problem. And again, like if it's a bigger movie that I can maybe pre-sell, it's not a problem, because then we'll just like, okay, the sales are made and we'll be fine with those movies. We have two movies like that really did super good pre-sales right now. But with those smaller movies, we are just waiting together for a better time to come. So this is like a second case. And then the third case is what I wanted to talk about, is kind of those movies in the middle for us, where you feel like you have a movie which is not like an obvious commercial movie, and not like a super difficult, very arty thing, but something in the middle, like Sweat, for example, the movie from Magnus, which was an art house movie in its kind of form and essence, but something which had a lot of like funky and interesting marketing aspects that we could really play with. So we created a very kind of colorful and upbeat campaign for it. And we got the Cannes selection, the Cannes label selection for it. And that was a very interesting case that when we accepted it, then we had a conversation, this kind of, okay, we accepted it and now what? And I felt like a lot of companies that accepted out of the 52 movies that were selected for the label, they really didn't know what it means and what they're going to do with it. And I feel like there was maybe just a few movies that really went for it. And for us, we just really quickly, we decided, okay, we're going to treat it like it's in Cannes, like as if Cannes was happening. So we did posters, trailers, reviews, everything. And I think we really won because the movie, we sold it to a lot of territories for pretty good prices. And I think for that movie, it was the right company with the right price. And we did a very similar business to, let's say, A White Day, which was an Icelandic movie, which we had in the Semen the year before in a physical festival in Cannes selection. And we pretty much have the same number, totally, and it felt like this was the kind of movie that the market was very open to because like the price was not crazy high. It had a lot of elements that they could play with. The movie is actually about also somebody who lives online very much. So this was also interesting that we all experienced that these days. And I think it was very similar with, for example, with Apples, this Greek film that was in Venice this year, that also had that. There was kind of, it had, you could get it for the good price and it wasn't like a big risk. And I think Alpha Violeta did a really good business with it as well, in that sense. So movies on that level where, and both films were bought by Curzon and companies like that where for them it was maybe like a less risky acquisition, but something they could, it was like a grease for their works in a way that they can keep, releasing movies. I think for bigger movies, that's, these are the conversations that we, I think the really small movies are in trouble. And the really big ones are definitely, not getting probably the prices that you would get otherwise. I see that being a problem,
Yeah, thank you.
And there's not many movies in the middle in that sense, It's very hard to find those kind of like The Guilty was a movie like that, for example, Susan, like when you had it, right? So it was like a surprise kind of hit,
Yeah, I think it's really important that you, as you mentioned, these smaller and in-between films, which, really have faced these problems. And the question is whether if you don't get the label of some kind of even online festival or some hybrid event, how do you market this film? As you said, you have an angle, for example, of a specific film. It lends itself to it. So there might be opportunities if you don't have these advantages for smaller films, that you dig into the promotion of the film, that you try to find alternatives that could work for the film. This is what comes across to me, that there's new thinking has to be done with all these kind of digital measures or opportunities that you have. This could be an opportunity, in fact. Or is it always bound to some event? I mean, how long can you wait for something to happen before you take action?
I mean, the digital world is not an obvious answer. I mean, Tina, you can probably talk about it later with, you know much more about, the VOD thing. But it's like, it's not like, Netflix is going to come to us and beg for this Romanian debut, It's for that, we need like a smaller devoted distributor. It's usually a theatrical or a festival exposure. And this is, the alternative is not there in that sense, and it's not going to be there quickly either. And I think, those big platforms, it's not like, now we get a bit more traction with them, but honestly, in the first few months of the lockdown, it's not like we got a lot of calls from Netflix saying, hey, we need content because our productions are stopped. And I think this is what a lot of producers are asking us this, like, oh, so it means like they will not have content that they produce because it's stopped. So you need to have a lot of interest from them for our kind of movies. And it's not true. It's, I think it's just gonna, those big platforms, the big problem is diversity, I think what they do is very much similar to, a lot of the movies and shows they do are similar to each other. And I think a lot of the movies that we do are about, kind of what, I don't know, let's say, call it European diversity or whatever, all sorts of filmmaking diversity. And there's maybe, 3-5 slots a year on those platforms for those kind of movies. It's not, and on the other hand, if you go to TVOD or Amazon or those things, that you will not put the marketing behind them to really promote them, because that's the revenues from that are, at least for us, very small, So without the festivals for those kind of movies, it is a big problem, and I don't think there's a solution at the moment for it.
Jan, one more question regarding your other
Sorry
hat.
for taking so much time.
No, it's totally interesting. With your other hat as a producer, when you formed the production company together with Eva and Katja, what has changed from you there as your as the production company? You are developing more, or are you waiting more?
I mean, just to clarify, it's not a separate company. It's more like an umbrella of the 3 companies working closely together very much. So it's not a separate company. So it's like Claudia is very much producing her things, and Eva is producing her things, and we are kind of supporting, and we kind of, whatever. It's more like a support network, actually, than a separate company. And I know that, you have projects with, like Steven, you guys have projects with Claudia, and this is an open field in a way. But looking at what the problems they're facing in that sense is, Claudia had a project stopped in the middle of shooting, which is resuming the shoot. It was a challenge, but they managed, and it was actually good for them to edit half of the movie and see what's missing and plan the second part better. It is a problem for cash, and they were expecting this movie to be finished much earlier. Eva had a big project with Jonathan Glazer that she was supposed to produce this year in Poland, set in Auschwitz, and that was completely moved to later. So I think if you have a small company like that, and I think, for example, like Eva's company is also like a boutique production now. So a lot of producers, they have like, I don't know what the statistics are, but you need to develop like, 10 projects to have like 1 or 2 done a year. And if your plan is to have one big project this year and it gets pushed, then you're really in trouble, because, a lot of these projects, they come after another. And I don't have to explain that to producers in the room. I mean, they know that. But it is a problem that is generally, facing a lot of people. The Polish Film Fund released. I know that, for example, their focus has been pushed a lot to development. So they did a separate call for development, and they created like a separate committee for development. So a lot of projects got money like that. So so they kind of responded to this idea that you cannot be on set, you cannot produce. Let's spend that time and money on thinking about other, developing new projects, and that's I think that's very good. So hopefully there will be a result from that.
Thank you, Jan. And we will have an opportunity for the audience also to ask questions later around all that. And now I would like to ask Tina, because this fits in nicely what we're talking about. How do films work online, on different platforms in different formats? Tina, can you present your model to the producers? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Level K is handling both the international sales for around 15 films a year. And then we also have the aggregation business model, where we aggregate for world major platforms all over the world, and then also local platforms. And for that, we have more than 6,000 titles. And for us, it's been more a clean cut in terms of the digital shift, because the digital shift has been on the way for many years. And we see that it's been a clean cut in terms of the positioning of each title, so that it reaches the right distribution outlet. We've seen that for international sales, we had to reinvent our digital marketing material and get involved much earlier with both producer and directors, even publicists. And our capacity is less during COVID-19 because of the way that we had to adapt in terms of preparing the right material. We need more time. So the whole timeline has changed for us in terms of having those 15 releases a year. On the digital aggregation side, the numbers increased on all platforms, and also the interest from distributors for using aggregation services. And then we had to optimize quite fast the digital tagging and the tracking of each film's digital promotion, and that includes also the audience behavior. But it's been a very clear and clean cut for the way most films that we work with are targeting more clearly the right distribution outlet. It's also been, so for us, in March and April, where Denmark locked down, the changes was that the aggregation and digital numbers increased. Through that department, we also run a VOD platform. So the support increased insanely as well, because suddenly you have an older generation trying to watch films on iPads, so it's down to basic elements, as the new generations watching more films online and facing those difficulties of getting the technical elements to work, to distributors that need to release more content every week, to producers that don't have time to wait and need to change the strategy for the film's release. And bigger titles, it makes sense to hold, because the theatrical income is still the most prominent of the whole distribution flow. And without the theatrical and the festival, you won't see the same numbers digitally, unless, of course, you work with a SVOD player. So the timeline changed for us. The focus, the capacity, or at least where we spent most of our capacity, that completely changed. We work differently with even like the world major players. I mean, the networking, the introductions, the promotion of all the films that we work with, everything completely changed. And we had to adapt quite quickly in order not to lose out, but also to do the right thing fast for the films that needed to be released. Many of our distributors' titles, in terms of aggregation, those titles were postponed for theatrical releases in Europe. And then there are other titles where we had to release much faster on all the platforms. And again, when we're working as an aggregator with platforms, the best thing is to be ready 3 months before the release on the digital platform. And that hasn't been possible this year. So it's been about running really fast at the same time as trying to adapt to all the changes. And when we look into the next year, I mean, we are ready now to release many more titles digitally. And then again, we are not sure completely for international sales. We know for sure that we cannot pick up smaller art house titles, because as Jan said, you do need a festival attention to create the right visibility, both for international sales, but also for digital distribution. We are not sure. I think we need to go to Q2 before we will start seeing the same amount of buyers on festivals. So I actually think we'll have to go to Cannes Film Festival before we'll see the distributors traveling. We already now know that both Sundance, Berlin will look differently in 2021.
Yeah, Berlin will become maybe more European festival as before.
And in a hybrid form. So some will be online, and then some will be... but the networking is important. And we cannot attend the same in the same capacity as we've done in previous year, because everything has changed.
Yeah, but also what everybody is stating is that the buzz around the films is missing. Yeah, that is what cannot be. I mean, you can somehow try to replicate it in a digital form, but you don't have the audience which you usually have in Berlin. Maybe there will be an audience if it looks as now, if the situation is as now. There will be an audience. That's at least something already. But I think also within the B2B area, like this hype, you know, when you have a film which is a surprise, the premiere is a surprise for everybody, and everybody is talking about it, and then buyers are maybe even queuing for a first-time filmmaker film. This is not possible at that moment.
No, and it is possible to create that digital buzz, but we cannot do that for the same amount of films that we are handling on the, you know, on the international sales lineup. And you have a meeting with the buyers during a festival where you have time to present in person. Digitally, that work, the preparation and the timeline for doing this for a single feature film, it's much more than the work we've done before, and it's not possible for all films, or at least you will achieve the same result. And it's not all films that need that treatment. I mean, some films are for non-theatrical distribution, and I think we'll see that with the smaller debuts and the art house titles, that they will be directly for non-theatrical sales. And then you still need to balance that with income on other outlets, because otherwise it's not possible to survive as a sales company. So that has been a more clean cut. But also art house films can still perform digitally, but completely depending on each title and themes and what you can dig into in terms of digital tagging and audience tracking. But again, it is also about capacity, because so much work to actually be done to achieve those results for a small art house film, and so much more work than on a bigger title.
That brings me to the other questions, because there are certain genres that still, at the moment, still work, like horror movies or films about escapism and out of this situation, that you're reading increasingly that they do have chances. Now, I don't know who any of the audience is sort of active in this area, but this still seems to be working. Why is this?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, sure, or for the others as well. I mean, yeah, you have some films in that genre. I know that, and so that's a question of.
No, but it's a wider spread, and it's possible to optimize across all rights, and genre films, horror films, thrillers. There will always be the big difference between foreign language and mainstream genre films, but there's a bigger and there's just a bigger audience for genre films.
And I mean, it is a specified audience. I mean, people who are interested in horror movies look for horror movies. And it's in general a bit younger audience that are used to traveling online as well, because that is where you see these kind of films and where you traditionally have been able to get into these films. And I think within that genre as well, there's a lot of fans who get together on different platforms to discuss and things like that. So once you're in these kind of genres, you're in a niche where people actually, where you can, there's a way of creating word of mouth online, digitally as well, because these, the fan groups of horror movies, for instance, are gathering, I guess, online as well and exchanging experiences.
Stephen, you want to say something?
Yeah, of course.
You guys probably do a bit more of that, no? I mean,
genre films have always worked, since I started my career over 25 years ago. It's always been the case that genre films are more of a safe commercial bet. So in a way, nothing has changed. But for all the reasons that Susan and Tina kind of laid out, I think another thing is there's a huge difference between an independent genre film and an independent art house film. And mainstream audiences tend not to embrace the art house films so easily, but will very readily engage with an independent genre piece because it feels intrinsically more commercial and intrinsically more watchable to them.
And I think you can forgive a bit more. If you have let's say, it's okay to look cheap if you're a genre film. But it's not okay to look cheap if you're an art film. My problem is that I don't like genre films. Like, I don't like horror films, and I find a lot of them horrible. And I think my problem is that I take this business a bit, and also my team, like, we take it a bit too personally, the whole thing. And it's, for us, it's very much like, do I like this movie, and not about like, can I make money of it? Like, we're asking the question, do I like it first, and then can I make money? And if it's like a no, then we don't even go to the second one, because we've had these the experiences we've had over the years that if you take a movie you don't love and it doesn't make money, then you're really pissed off, then and I guess that I think there are some companies who really thrive on having let's say a genre brand, and they really know their stuff within that, and it's okay for them to just, sell it to some VOD platform in Asia or something. But we don't even have those contacts. Like, for us to have, like, a lot of our movies, they would play at Fantasia, but because they have an atmosphere or something like that, but we would never have like a straight horror film, for example, So for me, that is that situation. Like, I don't even want to get there in a way. Like, I don't want to understand, why, let's say, Indonesian body horror sells. I don't want to know these people who buy that. You know what I mean? Like, you call me snob, but that's just, the thing is, I think we need to specialize in certain things.
There is a middle ground, though, because we do a lot of genre films, but we would never do the kind of low-level, basic type genre film. And we've christened it authored genre. So where you have a director with a very unique, distinctive voice who wants to, subvert the genre, actually, and surprise audiences in a way that's entirely unexpected. So it is possible to find genre films of quality, but not easy.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
And the thing is that bad films sell really, really well, and that's where we have, the aggregation side, where we can see the revenue income from the different distributors, and the worst films sell better digitally. And then we have the Level K international side, where it's the films that keeps us sane. The more high independent, the quality art house titles. But the work on those are so much more.
And I mean,
practical
yeah,
than I am.
And let's face it, when we look at the end consumers, when you have an independent art house film, you don't know what you get if you want to see it. If you go for a genre movie, you know exactly what you get. At least you have like a minimum level as a viewer that you dig into. And that's why it's easier, to have these films working. And as Stephen says, they've always been working. There's always been, when there was DVD, VHS or whatever, genre films, per definition, it's like easy entertainment for some people. We might not like it ourselves personally, but the audience is there for it. And they're not so critical in terms of the quality.
Shall we open up maybe for questions from the audience? Are there questions from you? Not even one?
We've been that inspiring.
There's one over there.
Gary.
Yes, so I will repeat it for the speakers. Yeah, please. Okay, Tina, it is about the aggregation service. Maybe you can explain a little bit what you are doing there. It's a question from the chat, or? No. So please, can you elaborate a little bit more on how you are doing that?
The aggregation is where we represent rights holders. And we are the middleman between the rights holders and the platforms. So that can be, in terms of the world players, it's Apple, Google, Amazon, YouTube. It can also be local platforms like Comcast, US. In the Nordic countries, we have all a cooperation with all the platforms. We work with some in UK, Russia, even Australia. But the thing is that the work as an aggregator is to be the middleman between the rights holders and the platforms. So our job is to coordinate with the rights holders, say the distributors, the metadata, the transcoding of files, and making sure that the films are released at the right time. And then our job is also to present to the editors of each platform information about the films and why they should highlight a film. And that can be because we are in South Africa and the person in charge of the iTunes store in South Africa is sitting in another country and maybe do not know about the theatrical success of a specific film, or don't know if it's an important local director or some actors that are known in this country. So our job is to actually present to the editors of each store, online store, present the right information so that the films are highlighted on the front page. And sometimes it's about the flow case, sometimes it's basic information. Some platforms it's about the algorithm, and we don't have that much to say, but we can influence rating that also work different ways, but increase the revenues for the distributors with some digital advertisement, so that we can reach the audience and we have the data on the audience behavior, and then we can kind of influence the rating so that the revenues are increased. We cannot do this on all films. But for many films, the main thing is actually the job in terms of making sure that films are released on time, and then informing the store editors about the necessary information for them to decide what films to promote.
And Tina, if I was a producer and I would come with my film to you, can I come as a producer to you?
Yes, but the business is a little bit different, because you do need, it's very easy just to put a film on 100 platforms all over the world, but you have to have an advertisement budget. or it can be specific information for some countries. It can be released after festivals or something. And that's not something we do as an aggregator. We don't submit to festivals to get the promotion. The most important as an aggregator is also to exploit the different rights, so rights windows, so that it's released on EST where possible, then TVOD, and at a later stage SVOD, and down the line AVOD, and never FVOD. So, but again, producers can come to us, but it's also a matter of, we'll check if the film has been playing at festival. If it's a 4-year-old title, it doesn't make sense. If you have a catalog of titles, it might make sense if you have home country. So there are different scenarios. If you have a 10-year-old title, it doesn't make sense because you might not be able to deliver the required material by the platform. So we do look into all these different aspects.
Okay, more questions? Doesn't look like. Maybe one more question from our side. How does the situation at the moment affect the MGs? You are usually paying sometimes. Are the amounts lower, or of course it is clear that you might be taking on less smaller titles? What can you say about that?
I think for me it's more of a question. It's like, do we take a movie or not? I think the fact, the market situation that we have at the moment, and I guess the global economy in general, is that I realized that for us now it's much easier to say yes or no, and we would say no quicker than we would before. So we have to be a bit more ruthless in the decisions and really ask ourselves, like, can I afford to take a chance? And I guess if it's the right project, then
you would still go for it.
Me personally, I would rather pay more for the project I really think works than, so it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of whether I take it or not,
And it also
and I
depends.
think it's the same for the distributors.
Yeah.
Either or. It's a film that works commercially. You can bring that package to the local country, and the MGs are the same, but there's no risk taking. So no in between.
And it's a question as well about the status of the film. Is it a film only on script stage? If it's that, how is the financing package so far? What is the combination producer, director, cast, budget, and so on? Or is it a film where you can actually see a rough cut and evaluate based on that? So it's really like, it's very different scenarios depending on the film.
Can you deliver and when? Can you deliver that and when? And
and especially if it's early stages, it's of course also a risky business in terms of, is this actually going to happen or is it not going to happen? So it's a balance of everything. I mean, it can be good on script stage if it's something that's planned for later and you can see that, the ideas in terms of financing are more or less in place, or you can add into kind of a co-production or whatsoever. So it's as Jan says, it's really project by project, but then again, also the way you look at it, if it's like with the question marks, then I guess we would at least tend to say, let's wait to see a rough cut if it's at an early stage. And if it goes away to someone else there, then it's what it is. So I think that's really one of the issues as well.
And I think that carries through to distribution MGs as well. If you're presenting distributors with a project which has commercial elements, a commercial script, a great director, those prices haven't really changed, and they don't really, If you're presenting something that is more risky or an unproven director or perhaps a little bit on the art house side, people are naturally going to be more cautious and pay less because we're in a very tricky economic position. So it's really project specific rather than a generalization of the market, I think.
I have a question from the chat. Somebody's asking, what are the actual long-term plans for art house/festival films in reality? As the digital content, even pre-COVID, was starting to dominate, and the younger next generation will continue watching it. So this is a question to all of you.
I think it really depends country by country, and I think the way I see it, every country has their own problem. Like for Germany, for example, I find it quite sad that you have a very old audience, and in general, the cinema, the theatrical market in Germany is not very adventurous, I would say, and I don't think it's reinventing itself the same way that it is in UK or other countries or Poland, or that the cinemas are not places where young people want to hang out. And I think there's a huge job to be done in terms of film literacy, education, getting people interested in culture and film in general. And I think a lot of very often the kind of movies that we do, which are, let's say, quite often edgy art house movies, doesn't mean that they're slow, boring ones, but just something which is not an obvious choice, maybe. Very regularly, I can sell them all around Europe and in the US and in other countries and in Asia, but not in Germany. So I think there is a big soul searching to be done in terms of the market and, building that audience. I think, let's say, there is a cinema in Berlin, which I like a lot, called Wolf. And they are the venue that I think a lot of cinemas should learn from in Germany, in terms of being this funky place with a couple of screens with a bar, which has a great atmosphere. They show edgy films. They have lots of young people go there. It is a place to be. And I think in a lot of countries, this change is happening. But, you need to do more to get that audience interested rather than just saying, oh, this is good for you. It's I often think of art house movies are the approach is a bit like with medicine. It's take it, it's good for you. It's not, doesn't taste good, but it's good for you for your health, and it's not, it should be more marketed as drugs, It's just you're going to have, it's this maybe secret thing that you should, really be in. Otherwise, it's, I think that's a real problem, for me.
But I also think that one of the things is that we see today and that we face today is something that has been developing throughout the years. And what we can see is that going to the cinema is not just going to the cinema. So it's more about being creative, trying to attract people to come to the cinemas, doing event screenings instead of, it doesn't need necessarily to be traditional 2 screenings every day, 7 days a week for the specific films. So it's really about, for me as well, what I can see through the past years is really more cooperation between all the different windows and circles in the industry. Cinemas talking more closely together with both distributors, sales agents, and basically the creators and the producers in order to make event screenings where it's possible maybe to have a director to come and talk and things like that, to do something a bit more different than just showing different films in the cinemas, because for that, of course, it's much easier to go and see one of the big American movies than it is to get people attracted in to see art house films and stuff like that. And what we need to face as well is, of course, we always also for art house films need to keep in mind what is our audience. And the audience is obviously smaller for an art house film with a niche subject matter than it is for one of the big American movies that have a lot of money in the back to show those films. But to do like event screenings, I think the UK is really good in making these one-day event screenings in the cinemas. I have been previously. So doing something like that, which is different, making surprises and stuff like that, so that it's not only going to the cinema, because going to the cinema, let's face it, is not cheap anymore either. So we need to find a balance, and I think it will die out if we not all work together, and that goes all the way back to the producers as well, to be creative and also, be able to, for a producer, when you're producing, to make sure that your talent will be available as well, to kind of integrate into this world that we are in today. This connection, I think, is also important.
And art house film has been dying for many years. We've always been talking about it, and it'll never die. What I think is super important is to think about from the beginning with the creatives, the positioning, the target group. Often we get films where the target group is between 20 and 100, and it's not reachable. Let's just be more clear in terms of the positioning, have a clear target audience. Think about the distribution outlets, and that might not be the same in all countries, but then think locally about the distribution partner. Because there's multiple possibilities, but we've always, the old traditional way of reaching out to at festivals to find the bias for the film is trying everything, instead of maybe focusing a bit more from the beginning and then making sure to have a very clear strategy and a marketing plan.
And I think it also goes back to the creative process. I think we have to be making stories that are unique and compelling for audiences to want to go and see. I think we're past the point where just because the film is an art house film, it would play in an art house cinema and art house audiences will go to see it. That's not enough. There's too much competition in the world. So it's really about making stories that are exciting and distinctive and unique and have the potential to attract audiences.
Hello. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think this is the one motto we heard in the last days when we had other Zoom conferences: is let the films speak for themselves. It's exactly what you're pointing at. I think this is quite important in these days. And also I find very healthy as well, and in a way it brings things forward that the communication between the different players in the industry are far greater now, to coordinate things, to organize things together from the very start, of the director, the producer, the sales agent, the exhibitor, the distributor. So that's a good and healthy change, I guess. But before we wrap the session up, I would like to say to everyone that you can reach EFP also with regards to making contact with either our guests here, the panelists, or with other sales agents. Also for those who are online, we're happy to help network, to create the network with these other sales agents to stay in communication with everyone.
Okay, so then I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you, Tine. Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Susan. Thank you really very much for coming to us to Hamburg today. Thank you, dear audience, for joining. Yeah, and see you soon, hopefully in reality.
Big fan of Hamburg, beautiful city. From what I saw today, yeah. I would come back. All right, guys. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.